Hello there, welcome back to the channel. It's Richie here from Dammy After Dark. Today we are joined by Marcus Roth from across the Great Ocean. And today we are going to be talking about the Dwarves. Yes, the best faction in the game and how they have been affected by the FAQ and the match play guide. How's it going, mate? You okay?
Yeah, Richie, thanks for having me.
No problem at all, mate. It was really good having you on the last one. And so I knew who I wanted to call up to talk about the dwarf changes. Have you been enjoying reading through all of these, mate?
Yeah, don't tell my work, but on Wednesday when the rules dropped, the first half hour, the first 2 hours, honestly, I was just reading and list building and like chatting with all my friends who play this game a lot, and I think we're going to enter into a golden age of dwarven supremacy, but we'll have that conversation as this video develops.
Yeah, no, I do completely agree. We have had so many buffs. We've definitely had some nerfs. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. The first thing that kind of stuck out for me was what they've done to our poor Trollhammer torpedoes and the Anvil. I know we did have a little bit of foreshadowing with the Trollhammer torpedo, but I definitely was not ready for that change. Not at all.
Yeah, me either. I think it was a little unjust. It's funny. It almost makes Iron Drake's battlefield role a little bit more concrete. Before they were like this weapons platforms that had excellent shooters attached with the rest of the Iron Drakes, but it was still kind of played like a cannon most of the time for me. Now it's a lot different. Now they're actually probably going to be scrapping and claiming objectives, in my opinion, because they don't take the move and shoot penalty. So it was definitely a nerf and sad to see it go, but it different, now.
Yeah, no, it is. I think we might actually see some bigger units of Iron Drakes now. Like, gone are the days of the little 5-man units kicking around. I think we're going to see units of 20 of these potentially, which is going to be glorious to see. And the other thing is as well, if you know that you need to wound a monster on a 5, that's fine. It's the whole needing to wound on a 2 and then you roll a 1. So that's fine. Like, as soon as you lower the expectations and you know exactly what they're going to do, that's fine. Yeah. Like, I'm going to be much happier if Iron Drakes going forward. I think
they're still probably pretty good at taking down monsters en masse. So you just probably need 15, 20 instead of 5 or 8 or 10. You might actually take drilled now too. I'm not sure about you, but I never took the drilled upgrade on them. But now I might.
Yeah, see, I always took drilled before. I was a line hammer aficionado. So I really enjoyed just kind of like expanding and decreasing them. I think it's definitely worth taking drilled on them now. But before we dive too deeply and too greedily onto the Iron Drakes, I just want to talk through the changes in the FAQ that the Dwarves themselves had. So if you go to page 15 in the FAQ, the first one that comes up is the Strike the Runes change. What have they done to our Anvil? So obviously across the entire FAQ, all of the spellcasters reduced. So a level 4 is only +2 and a level 3 is +1. That's absolutely fine, but then the Anvil went down to +2 as well. So now it is casting the same as a level 4, but there's a big caveat to this. The Rune of Oath and Steel went up by 1 on both of the levels of casting. So it went on the lowest level to an 8 from a 7, and on the highest up to an 11 from a 10, which suddenly makes that 2 harder to cast than it was before. And then the Rune of Hearth and Home, it's absolutely brutal. So the chances of you being able to get off the +1 save is very difficult now. So you're probably going to really struggle to be able to get the +1 save off, but you're going to get the rerolls. But what this does mean in correlation to the new rule that's come out, parry, in the FAQ, that if you're using hand weapon and shield, you get a +1 save in combat. So getting a +2 save suddenly becomes very invaluable. So you can see that the game's designers were pretty scared of Dwarf Infantry, I feel.
Yeah. Definitely a clue that was intentional, that they didn't want it to happen. Also, Ironbreakers not being able to get a 2+ naturally. Also, anything with full plate and sword and board can't. I think they're very keen to avoid that, and we're seeing that in their increasing of the strike, the spell +11 changes.
Yeah, it is slightly annoying. It is what it is. I do feel that would have taken the Dwarves into kind of a realm in the stratosphere that people probably aren't potentially happy to play into. I know Dwarves were a problem army in 8th edition, so I can imagine they're trying to keep us away from that as well.
Yeah. I think my bread and butter tactic has always been Ironbreakers with the Rune of Oath and Steel on them at like the 1st edition of this game, if you will. And so I have been living in 2-up save re-rolling all failed saves, then a 5-up ward save land, and it is unkillable. I mentioned this in the last interview we had, so I feel like, they just put that to bed, and that's okay with me.
Yeah, it is definitely too good. So I don't know if the Anvil's actually going to be an auto-include in Grand Army and Royal Clans lists anymore. Obviously, if you still do want to throw your units forward to those backfield objectives, then it's definitely worth it. But you're going to have to hide it from those Empire and those Cathay cannons. Yeah. I played a game the other day into Cathay, and I was running the Royal Clans. And yes, to be honest, I was running it at T10. So this is another change that the Anvil has had as well, where war machines have had 2 massive nerfs to them. So there's a couple of little changes in the FAQs. One of them's kind of hidden away, which is the max save you can ever have on a war machine now is a 3-up. So you can't even put the Rune of Gromril on there. But then this other one means that you definitely couldn't. So a armor rune only affects the crew and doesn't affect the actual war machine itself, which I feel is a little bit heavy-handed from GW, considering that that's now gone from an auto-include to you're going to have to hide it behind Impassable every single game.
Yeah. I will say another difference in how you played it and I played it is I didn't always take the 100-point rune. It wasn't always in the budget for me. It is very strong when I could afford it, but to me it was a nice-to-have, not a needs-to-have, so I've kind of already been living in a world where it doesn't always have Strength 10, but as you've alluded to before this, we started recording. Sounds like across the pond they have a lot more range attacks than what I'm used to. So, like, depending on your meta, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of miles between us, and it's amazing how much the meta shifts in between those.
Yeah.
But yeah, where I am, it's a lot of shooting. But there are definitely changes to stop those magical shots. So changes in the rune lore, and Anvil has now got a dispelling range of 24, which it had before, but it has a +3 modifier, which is just crazy. So you're actually getting better dispelling than the opponent is casting with those level 4s. Yeah, unless you're playing into like Beastmen or Mortuary Cult that can get the extra pluses and potentially the double Mortis lists, but it's still very, very strong. The Rune Lord as well, getting up to 21 inches with a level 2 dispel and a Rune Smith on a level 1 at 18 is so good. I know you've been enjoying these.
Yeah, I have enjoyed the Rune Lord in one game. MR2 shut down my opponent. It's the equivalent, as everyone can tell, MR4 in the last meta, which is, they would never let us get to MR4 because it's too strong. And so the fact that this is basically the equivalent of MR4 is totally insane. In the last game I just played, my opponent had 4 casters, and he only resolved the summoning 3 times in all 6 rounds of combat trying to cast it every turn. He just couldn't punch through MR2. His casters were level 1 and 2. Gone are the days of getting your units blown off the board, I think, by shooting attacks.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. There is also a change. It's not actually really a change, but it does come in correlation with the magic getting harder for opponents to cast. The Rune of Calm and the Rune of Balance are suddenly almost in like auto-includes. I would definitely say that Calm is making its way into all of my lists. What about yourself?
So I have yet to experiment with it on the actual battlefield, but I do agree with you in theory. It's excellent. It's still very castable at its levels that it's at. Even on a 7, it's still totally affects the battlefield. If you hit it that other higher level, I think it's a 10. Obviously it basically is battlefield wide, which is awesome. My opponent, who was a Dark Elf at the time, really struggled to even cast the spells. Because of how MR works, it's reducing it, what they roll all the time. I wasn't even rolling Dispel. My MR was just being like, oh, I guess I don't cast it. That's what he was saying every time. So adding 2 to that, it's essentially like all our models have MR3 in a weird way, if you can think of it that way. And then if they have MR2, then it's like MR4, which is, insurmountable.
Yeah, I know. It's absolutely crazy. I've played a couple of games now. So with the extra +2 to cast onto Mortises, even though they're getting the +1 from each other, yeah, it's just struggling to get anything off, especially casting into our units now. Just if you're playing a Dwarf army that is spamming either like Rune Smiths or even like the Rune Lords in the units, like just the native MR1 across the board, MR2 is just so difficult for them to crack through. Yeah. So this is a massive, massive buff to dwarves. And considering we're going to be playing into a realm now from the match play guide where we're going to walk up to objectives, camp on them, and then potentially just try and push through to further objectives, it's going to keep us alive longer. It's going to keep us scoring those points. And then we're just going to hopefully end up winning a lot more games going forward.
Yeah. I think dwarfs have nicely found themselves slotted into the most anti-magic faction in the game, which I think is really awesome and a great, like, fun, I think, thematic place to be all along. I think back in first edition, MR1 and MR2 was underrated generally at large, but now I think obviously it's going to be very well rated.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, narratively, obviously, dwarves, they would get the magic cast on them and then it would earth out through them into the ground.
Yeah.
So I think that us being the best dispellers in the game is what we should be. Like, that's very narratively driven, and it feels really good to me. Like, people shouldn't be able to just cast magic like willy-nilly at a dwarf army. It should mostly get stopped, in my opinion. Obviously, everyone that's watching this who's playing magic spam armies is probably like, no! But yeah, I like it. It's a really good change.
A meta prediction is that there will be a lot less magic missiles taken in general. And so as a result, the MR will be a little less powerful because there's just less things trying to damage them via magic anyways. And it's going to be a lot more enchantments, I think, and like AoE aura type spells that are positive for the enemy wizards team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we're going to see a lot of like double necromancy lists and banshee screams and all that kind of stuff kind of making its way back in. Yeah, and obviously Cathay with the +3 to cast on those bound items, we're going to still see play from those, but I do think you're right. I think everybody just spamming Fireball is probably going to change a little bit, I think, going forward.
Yeah, Ruby Ring is probably dead. I mean, it's certainly dead against the dwarf list, but not that the meta will tech against dwarfs, unless they do because of all these other changes we're about to talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, they might have to. Yeah. So one of the biggest changes from this week, which has been absolutely crazy, is the match play guide. The match play guide has brought an entirely new way to play. We're playing with objectives. What's really good into objectives? Stuff with really good saves, high toughness that just doesn't die. And also the fact that we can just stubbornly trudge forward and push the foes back off those objectives as well.
Yeah. Stubborn shield wall is going to become even more of a hot commodity, I think, in the land of standing on and near objectives. Also, high weapon skill is also a defensive stat, essentially, because your opponent hits on 4s essentially basically all the time. I find that for newer players, sometimes fighting against dwarfs is sometimes frustrating because on paper, they look fine, but when you actually roll the dice, you're always rolling one higher more than you're used to, and it's just a very frustrating experience. If I go, I need 4s, and then I wound on 5s, or I wound on 4s, and then they have full plates randomly, like Iron Drakes is a great example that people don't expect that, and then you can reroll 1s, and then you nail the 6 on the reroll, and and I find that that's probably going to become more important as objectives see more play. The fact that we can just sit on anything and hold it better than any faction in the game.
Exactly. I mean, this is going to change the way how a lot of people play. So you can't corner camp anymore. You can't just sit back with a gun line. You're going to have to play a very, very different game than if you've just been sitting back, which I think is really, really good for the game. You want a really fun, almost narratively driven game. If you're imagining that these are key points on a battlefield that you're going to have to go and claim, then that is how the game's going to look. There's going to be a lot more infantry in the game because infantry is just really good now, and it's just going to seem a lot more fluid and a lot more fun. This is a golden time for Old World. Now, one of the biggest changes for just any infantry in the game, which really, really does affect dwarves, is on page 190. So if we go down this, so it's the regular infantry rules. Change to the entry as following. Press into battle. In the heat of battle, orderly ranks become a swirling melee, except during the turn in which they charge. A fighting rank of a unit that has this rule and is arrayed in a combat order 2 ranks deep. In other words, models that are directly behind the base-to-base contact with units in the actual fighting rank are considered to be within the fighting rank. This is absolutely massive. There have also been a couple of videos on YouTube. One of them is by D6 Wounds, where they've explained this with like little diagrams and stuff. This is so big for dwarves. Being able to fight in 2 ranks is insane. And also, we have a mercenary unit that can now fight in 3 ranks. Just saying.
and when charged, more or less, right? Because if you charge, you don't get the bonus.
We're
So
never charging.
yeah, exactly. So that's just basically we always get 2 attacks or 2 ranks of attacks. Totally stoked for this. In the U.S., we actually played a few tournaments pre this with fighting 2 ranks because we wanted to see infantry to be stronger. So there was a lot of comp with that. So I had a taste of this before, and hammerers were very strong in that case. Ogres were very strong in that world, but it doesn't apply to monstrous infantry and how they worded this, so that's not applicable anymore. Yeah. So, anyways, this is going to again change this. I think there's going to be a world where there's 2 infantry blocks just looking at each other, one enemy and one friendly, and neither of them wants to charge because the other side will get so many more attacks, even though the charging side will get more initiative. The math, if you math it out, the defending non-charged unit gets more attacks on average. So then what happens next? Okay, well, now you need flankers and other things to disrupt the bonus of, that small advantage of being the one who is charged. And then all of a sudden we're playing a very interesting strategic rank and flank game. So I think some people might initially be upset that parity has become a thing. But to me, that sounds like the best part of the game. Why it's called a rank and flank is why you want to get the flanks off. There's a lot of value.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. Rank and flank is back, baby. Hopefully it does change from this kind of like 360 no scope nonsense that's been going on the last couple of months. I'm looking forward to jumping back into some Royal Clans as well. I know I said I wanted to play X-Force forever now, but just the idea of being able to use some massed infantry is it's quite appealing, to be perfectly honest. So going into the next rule that also is amazing is the massed infantry rule, getting a +1 combat bonus if you outnumber your opponent. So we're going to be after those big blocks. Suddenly you're going to get a lot more combat res and those pesky dragons charging into you as well.
Yeah, this one's self-explanatory. Weirdly, although in the lore, dwarfs are few in number, on the board, dwarfs are one of the main infantry factions. So we almost always outnumber our opponent in the actual combat, and we're going to be getting that +1 a lot. In this new world order, though, I don't really know if we'll see that. There might be a lot of new infantry styles popping up, and then actually counting the models will matter a lot. So we'll see how that pans out as the world shifts around these rules.
Yeah, I think if we're playing against like undead factions, I don't think we're going to be ever getting the outnumber. Right. But I think playing into like those pesky high elves, then
Empire maybe. Really, it really depends on how you built your list. Like I take 32 Royal Clan Warriors or 31 Longbeards, but if the Empire just has 34 people on the charge, they might outnumber it. Hopefully we kill more, but it's going to really matter, like the number you actually list build with, I think, for some factions.
Yeah, no, I think so, definitely. So next up, we have potentially one of the most interesting rules in the game that has changed. We have alluded to this before, but it is parry. With sword and shield, warriors attempt to deflect the enemy's attacks whilst they are engaged in close combat. A model with this rule that is equipped and chooses to use a hand weapon and shield improves the armor value by 1 to a maximum of 3. Now, the interesting bit when it says choose to use, there is another rule that goes with this, where now in between combats, you can change your weapon. So you can swap from great axe to hand weapon and shield in between combats. I'm glad that that's back from the beginning of the first edition of this, because it did felt a little bit annoying when you couldn't change. So I'm really happy that that's back. And yeah, getting the +1. Are you ever going to take great weapons again? I don't know.
I think so still. AP2, the +2 strength, there's a lot of reasons to take it. I think if your opponent comes in with a lot of high volume, low AP attacks, you're going to want a great weapon because you'll kill them dead, and they might only kill a few dwarfs. I'm really excited for like these hybrid armies, units rather, models that have a hand weapon and can take a great weapon and a shield, like Longbeards or Hammerers. In my mind, stick out as huge winners for this. I think Hammerers might become like this Swiss Army knife dwarf unit that literally does everything. It has shield wall, it has stubborn, it has Gromul armor. It's essentially like a quasi Ironbreaker unit now because they have all those buffs minus the ward save. But if you have the banner, they already have a better ward save now with a 5-up ward. They also can do a challenge tar pit where they have that ability to give and receive challenges if there's a Thane in the list. I think that's very unique. But talking about hand weapon and shield more and great weapons, I think the ability to receive a charge, go hand weapon and shield, proc shield wall, and then next turn, if you win or lose the combat, doesn't really matter. You're only going 2 inches anyways. And then next turn, take out the great weapons and rain wrath on the enemy because they might not have lance anymore if we did the follow up.
And that's also an interesting. It's also an interesting tactic for if you've charged into an enemy unit as well, because they're going to have more attacks than you. So you're potentially going to lose the first round of combat if you charge into something. So you can do your shield wall, and then suddenly when they followed up into you, straight down.
And funny enough, on hammers again, if you get charged, their ability procs on the model, not on the hammer weapon. So you actually get 2 hand weapon attacks if you get charged, and initiative bonus, which is kind of funny. People might not have noticed in the rules.
That's hilarious. Another fun one that I don't know if many people have thought into is Slayers. Slayers actually had a massive bonus from this. I know no one's looking at them, but if you have a big unit of Slayers and you take the entire front rank as Giant Slayers, so they get 2 attacks native, you give them additional hand weapons, so that's 3 attacks, and then you put with Motley Crew, you put great weapons behind them, so that's 3 attacks each from the front and 1 attack with a great weapon from behind. So suddenly you're actually getting a bit of a blender unit there.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Because of that Motley Crew, your back rank can just be using that hand weapon, that great weapon. Live on this call right now, Richie, you just taught me something. That is a very interesting tactic, and I think I'm going to try that.
And then you get death blow as well when they die, so suddenly you could potentially just get like an absolute horrendous volume of attacks coming out, which I think could potentially make Slayers relatively viable in a combat meta. I think obviously if you're playing into a shooting meta, then they just get picked off too quickly. But if your tournament scene or if your home games, there's a lot of combats, I think Slayers are worth looking at now. Like that is a lot of attacks.
Actually, that's a great point. How I run Slayers when I was dreaming about them in first edition was the Rune of Confusion, which makes it so that when people charge in, they don't get the initiative bonus. And with 2 hand weapons, they actually have about initiative 4, I think. They actually might go first, and then they can really put the licking on like they're an elf.
Yeah, plus remember as well that they always wound on a 4 as well. So that's pretty neat. Like you can do a lot of damage.
They're a very rare 2 hand weapon unit in this game, I think, these days.
I know. So Slayers, definitely worth a look in.
Oh, another thing about Shield Wall and being stubborn that's really powerful is the new changes to lance. Obviously, dwarfs wouldn't be caught dead on the battlefield with a lance, but enemies charging in with lances, if we stubborn in shield wall, based on how the new changes to lance are, they will not get that follow-up lance, and then all of a sudden we've blunted their lance. Not actually in the rules, but I think that's a really unique and powerful upgrade we've gotten to receive cavalry charges. And another reason why switching weapons is really powerful, because we receive the charge with shields, take out the great weapons to kill the cavalry next turn, and then we're really trading up, right? Cavalry models are like 30 points a model or something like that, where dwarfs are like 15 to 20 points a model. That's a great exchange.
Oh, hell yeah. Like those Bretonnian armies and the high elves charging into us, we're going to batter those dastardly LD going forward. Like, they're just not going to be able to do it. So you're stood there. If you manage to get the Anvil buff off as well, you're on a bloody 4-up rerollable save, and then suddenly you just pull it out and start smashing with a great weapon. It's going to be absolutely glorious. I haven't actually played with this yet, but yeah, I'm super excited. Hopefully I'll get a game in against Brett over the next couple of days, so I can laugh at them with their lance formation.
Yeah, it's funny to be excited to get charged by Bretonnian Grail Knights, but I think we will be.
Yeah, 100%. Another really interesting change that has come is in the shoe-in phase. So the Lookout Sir rules have changed. So if anyone in your local meta has been playing with, say, chariots in units, well, suddenly you can actually just shoot the chariot. So if it's with a different unit type, so if it's a horse in an infantry block or it's a chariot in there as well, you can actually pick him out and just shoot him, which it just means I just don't think anyone's actually going to do that anymore. I don't personally like it. I don't think it looked very good on the tabletop. I mean, we couldn't do it anyway. So I was definitely against it. It's
it's
too
gonna
too
feel
new
like
and fangled.
I think it's gonna feel like cheating the first time you actually do. If someone does put a chariot in here, you're like, oh wait, I can shoot this now. Like, I don't think people are gonna get right away how much that impacts the longevity of those characters in that unit. It's kind of now, if you do that, you're giving away free infantry kills with cannonballs because you're shooting at the character, but oh, there happens to be 3 ranks of infantry behind it. So it's not only am I shooting your character, I'm also tagging 2 to 3 other ranks with cannonballs. I think you're right. We're not going to see that much anymore.
No, I don't think we will. So another one that has changed, which is very, very good for us. Infantry and cavalry cannot get a better save than a 2-up, and chariot, monster, and war machines can't go to a 3-up. I alluded this earlier with the Anvil change, which is a bit annoying, but that does mean that you can't get dragons on 2-up saves anymore. Yes!
Yeah. Perfect, right? While we're talking about monster slaying, before this, we started recording, you mentioned that we might not consider taking the rune of smiting anymore. And Richie, you should go into that because that was an interesting point.
Yeah, so I think that we're not going to need that going forward. With the changes to regen as well, where they get, obviously you can get more damage out of smiting now because the way that regen has changed, you're going to be rolling a dice for each of the wounds that goes through. But I just generally don't think we're going to need it because the challenge is now, if a dragon comes into you, you're going to want to throw a unit champion or your cheapest hero into it because of the little change to the initiative step for mounted characters when they fight you. So the first attack that goes, so say if you're playing against an Orc Wyvern, which is what we were speaking about earlier, it has a strike first attack with the tail, which is poison as well. Obviously poison's not as good anymore, so it potentially won't kill you. But if you fight with your unit champion and he takes 1 wound, that is the end. The mount and the rider cannot fight anymore. And then suddenly you've got CR 8 or 9 in your unit of Dwarf Warriors now, which is absolutely insane. And yeah, you're going to double outnumber them. They're going to run away, and you're going to try and chase them over. So yeah, it's. I don't think we need smiting anymore. I think we're going to be trying to win battles through our combat res, and yeah, the good old fashioned way. So I think it's a definite kind of change in the game now. We definitely could do a lot more damage with smiting now because like the Chaos Dragons can't take regen or anything like that anymore, just because of the 500 point caps. You're not seeing those like turbo expensive Dragon Lords anymore. So we could get potentially more value from smiting, but I don't think it's an auto include anymore because we can literally just sacrifice one of our really cheap characters or our unit champions, and then suddenly you're auto winning anyway. So I don't think we need to.
Yeah, those 3 different FAQ changes, or errata, are going to totally upend how people build characters. I think any mount with a strikes first weapon, like the Wyvern, as you mentioned, becomes a real liability, right? Only scoring 1 combat res on a challenge. People are going to be trying to do this champion challenge strategy a lot, right? It's very obvious. So the better your initiative is, the worse you are in that challenge, right? Because you want, the key is that if the rider kills someone in the challenge, the mount may no longer strike, or if the mount, kills at the top of the initiative. So really what I'm noticing is people are going to want to tank their mounts, the character on the mount's initiative by taking a great weapon so that they happen lower in the initiative order and there's more chance to score initiative points, which is a weird situation we find ourselves in the rules. These 3 changes Richie just mentioned in combination, I think, are the biggest changes in the whole system. I think we're not going to see these crazy dragons much anymore. If there are mounted characters, they're probably going to be like fast attack characters who can hit the flank fast, maybe score a couple points. You can't send a champion to the fighting rank because he's not a character. So Blender Lord type multiple attack things in the flank are going to score a lot of CR and can't be challenged out. And so I think that's an interesting change in the game we're going to see.
Yeah, for sure. I think some people will still take dragons, for instance, but I think they'll be trying to take 2 or 3 of them. Like we'll probably see a lot of the Chaos armies that are running the 2 Chaos dragons because they can now take an Exalted Champion on a dragon, which is just kind of ridiculous, and then the Warpfire Dragon. So I think we'll see those running around almost as a unit together to try and munch up units. But then again, those armies aren't going to be doing that good on objective play, so we can just focus on killing those while they get bogged down in kind of challenges and stuff.
Dragons are only one model, pretty good unit strength, but they can easily be out unit strength too. If you're in combat or an objective, if it is a stalemate, Dwarfs are going to have the advantage there because we have way more large unit strength units.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, everything outside of Iron Drakes as well is going to be getting a +1 to save. So yeah, it's so good. It's so good. The next couple of changes which I want to talk about are the dead and fled changes. This is absolutely massive for us. So obviously before, units would give up a certain amount of points when they get below 25%, but now it's also worth 50% if you go below 50. And for monsters with the starting wounds as their unit strength, they also do it as well. So there's not going to be a game anymore when you've got a dragon running around on 1 wound at the end of the game, hiding and not getting any points for it. Suddenly you're going to actually be going to get quite a lot of points for that, which I feel is a massive improvement for the game. Like, how many times has that happened to you when there's just a dragon on 1 wound and your opponent's like, well, I'm going to hide behind this building?
Yeah. It's so frustrating. Certainly as a dwarf, but I think for every player in the old world, not just dwarfs with their movement 3, it just didn't feel right. Like, I feel like this change is almost correcting how it should have always been, not so much a community requested change, right? Like, I think it's just was such a feels bad when someone snuck away, or like 6 infantry models snuck away and you don't even score 25% of that in the old system. Now I feel like you're getting what you deserve. Everyone is, which is good.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So the next change I want to talk about is some of the changes to a couple of the different spells which do actually affect us. So firstly, this one's pretty massive. So the change to Earthen Ramparts, changing how spell versions of low linear obstacles are used, which means that that's going to affect our sappers and also what Burlock can do with the entrenched positions.
Yeah.
Now that there is a precedence for it working like that, that is also how it is going to be used for the dwarves doing it as well. So suddenly your opponent's not going to be in base-to-base contact. They can only get 1 attack. They don't get any of their furious charge or anything like that, and they can't do impact hits or stomps. This is massive. Earthen Ramparts and sappers and Burlock are suddenly going to be absolutely key to a lot of games. So if you're running X-Force armies and you're running those big Thunderstar lists, this is so good.
Yeah. One question I think that hasn't been solved yet on this is a cannon entrenched from the front, or is it entrenched on all 360 degrees? Do you think you know the answer to that? I feel like it's 60 degrees, but that's just my hopes, I guess.
So I would probably say, obviously the cannon is skirmish, but I do think they do technically have a front arc, which is what you fire from. So I would say it would just be on that front bit. I mean, we could potentially try and cheese it and just say it is 360, but I would probably play it as just the front, I think.
Yeah, that feels right. When they give you an entrenchment item, like in the Battle of Skull Pass, they gave you this little ring. It is clearly only meant to, cover one side of the cannon. So I think that's what they feel, and GW often tries to match rules to the real world when it can, and I think that's a great example of front arc only. Yeah. Unfortunately for us, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, I know. So the next spell that I want to talk about is Travel Mystical Pathways. For those of you who didn't play into this, this was an utter bullshit spell. The massive Death Star units of poison shooting goblins and poison shooting undead would just zip around, get out of our charge arcs, and just basically piss off around the corner. Apologize for my French.
In the US, we actually always comped that it could always be within 12 inches. It had to be fully within 12 inches. So this is an experience I only experienced a few times to be the full strength of Travel Mystical Pathways, because I guess in the US we were cool with not having to put up with any part of it within 12 part of the
it's quite interesting. Like, I played into this for probably about the entire year, so I've had to deal with this quite a lot, and it's been so frustrating to deal with. Although saying that, Runes of Spellbreaking do kind of stop this, so I mean, it's fine. But yeah, comp to be totally within 12 completely changes the game. I can't imagine that many people trying to take this anymore. So that is only positive for the game. The next big one that I want to talk about, and probably the last spell I'm probably going to talk about, is the changes to Pillar of Fire. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
James Workshop has listened and changed probably the most egregious thing. I mean, it's not the most egregious thing in the entire game, but when you're running a line of stunty warriors that are all walking up the board, and you've got your perfect little line of troops,
Yeah.
and you've got loads of pillars going backwards and forwards, the fact that it's now random is just so good. So good.
I think they gave it the patented GW triple nerf, and it deserved it. And we don't have to go on to it any much more. It deserves to be dead.
I know. It got exactly the same triple nerf the Anvil got, though, didn't it?
That one didn't deserve it, but whatever.
I don't think any of the dwarf nerfs were necessary, in my personal opinion. I mean, like, cool. I feel that the army, as it was before, with all of these buffs, would potentially be too good. So yeah. I fully appreciate that. And how nice is it that Games Workshop were worried that the dwarves were going to absolutely rule the meta? So I'll take it. They were thinking about us for a change.
It really indicates that they're really smart. If they thought we'd be too strong, so they needed to do some arbitrary reduction of strength, and they got rid of some of our best pieces. But I don't feel like that's what happened here. I think they just took us down at the knees just because they just felt it was out of line with their general, rules aesthetic and whatnot. So I can't give them that much credit, but I do think it was necessary. I think we would be the scourge of the old world if we weren't reduced in some way. So, I guess that's it.
Yeah, no, I do definitely think so. So there's also been some changes to X-Force. Now, if you were running just loads of gyrocopters and ruling the skies, what was the worst thing that could have possibly happened to you in your game? It was the little toot of the horn, and the horn of Fredmund would just kind of ruin your day and you wouldn't be able to move. I've played against this loads, and trying to win a game against Bretonnia is so difficult when you're mainly running gyrocopters. Now that is only once per game, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And if you pair that with another rule that come out in this FAQ as well, so single-use items that are magic, do they count as having been used even if the test is failed for them? And the answer is yes. So you might not even have to face the horn. Obviously, the Beastmen have still got the banner, but then again, that's still only single use, so I don't know if that's going to come out too much. Cathay have a once per game one as well. So you've only got to deal with it for one turn. So if you can deal with their shooting for that turn, or potentially one of your units getting killed, then we have air superiority, baby.
Yeah, which is how it always should be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, if you've read the Gottschalk and Felix books, you can just imagine all of the little gyrocopters flying around and slamming them into the flanks of the dragons.
One day, I really do hope they make a Spirit of Grugny model. I mean, it'll be like giant, like it won't be, it'll be like a colossal or like a Titan from 40K. But I would want that to put on my shelf and then once a year play with it in an actual game. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. I'm really hoping that they do like Warhammer Legends models or something particularly. Yeah. So like heroes from not old world, but from the world that was in Warhammer Fantasy, but like newer sculpts of them. Yeah. So getting some of like Forgrim. Although saying that, we should be getting a model for Forgrim at some point in the future, right?
I could definitely see a box too, like of Gorchak, Felix, Max Schreiber, Aaliyah, in like one pack, and you buy the novels.
So they actually brought this out. It was a Black Library exclusive that you could only get in like Warhammer World, I think. And that came out in, I want to say 2010. I could be completely wrong. If you know the date, please let me know down below. But yeah, you could actually buy all of them. Horrendously expensive now. Yeah. I looked at trying to get them from eBay and it was just ridiculous money.
That's what I was alluding to. Like, it'd be nice to have like a new plastic modern version. I mean, most people who play the old world have some Black Library books. I feel like they read when they were a child or something like that. And I think that series is the best series, so they should represent it.
100%. I'm super excited for when they finally get around to it and they start making books about when Gottschalk is a normal dwarf and his like escapades that are based now in the old world, because he's alive and he's mooching around. and I'm super down for that.
He's probably an engineer at this point. He's just like a
He would be,
normal,
mate.
regular guy before the Slayer Oath.
So before we finish this video on how the FAQ has affected dwarves, there is one big and I would say shining negative that's come into us. So remember the days when you've got your hero with Gromril armor and a chariot charges into your unit and you're going to stop those impact hits with a challenge. Unfortunately, now the impact hits are done before the challenge is issued. So unfortunately, we're going to have to try and tank those. But normally they are only, well, Ren 2. I mean, obviously the Beastmen can get a bit higher than that, but normally only Ren 2, which means we're going to be on a 5-up save, which is so good. Yeah. So I know obviously it's not good because we used to be able to get the 2-up save against that from the Gromril armor, but still it's just something to be aware of because that is a kind of a side nerf and it feels pretty horrendous actually.
Yeah, I think they're going to score, 2 to 3 extra CR on that, and we have to plan accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely something that you need to look out for as well. One last little change as well is the open order pivot is now up to 90 degrees. So if you've got enough movement for your stubby little legs to take you there, then you can definitely do that as well, which is a very interesting change.
Yeah, it's for Rangers, Slayers, as we just talked about. Might see Battlefield play now. Yeah, so that's interesting.
100%. Right, I think that is probably all of the kind of changes to us. So, like we were just saying off air, there has been so many changes that have just kind of micro affected the entire game. The addition of all of the objectives across the board and all of the secondary objectives and even the special secret objectives. Now, these are really interesting as well. There's one about just stopping spells. Weirdly, we can do that really well. Shooting units off the board. Weirdly, we can do that one as well. And also killing monsters and heroes. Funnily enough, that's kind of already our game plan. Yeah. So there's just so many buffs to our army and also some side nerfs. I was speaking to a couple of people on the Discord about this, and I think that the older builds are dead, but we are going to rise from the ashes. We're going to create new tactics. We're going to create new ways how to play. And yeah, I think we're going to be one to watch out for, I think everyone should hopefully start to fear the dwarves into 1.5.
Definitely. This was such a cool video, Richie. I'm glad we could get together and talk about this again. I hope people find this to be useful. Definitely in the comments, let us know. If you're a dwarf player, did you find this useful?
Thank you very much for coming on, Marcus. Funnily enough, everyone, he is getting married next week. So Valaya's blessing and congratulations. I hope you drink all of the Bugman's XXX and have the best time.
Definitely, sir. Aye, sir.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming on, mate. And yeah, everybody have fun with those dwarves. So his computer literally just died on the last sentence. So thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Marcus, for coming on and talking about some dwarves. And if anybody is after any dwarves for their armies, now that they're going to get a lot stronger, head over to UK Resin Print. The description down below has a deal in there as well, so you can get 15% off all purchases from Tom. So rock and stone, everybody, and I hope this is a new dawn for those dwarf players. Let's go out and let's reclaim the holds. Rock and stone.